Recording. I think we're good. Valerie Burke. This is time with Harmony Hill and webinars, both. And I'm just absolutely thrilled to be here and so much appreciate the opportunity to present this information. I'm a nurse by trade and a former nurse practitioner. For several years, I have been not working as a nurse practitioner, but working as a writer for Mercola.com. And some of you are probably familiar with that. It's a huge health website. Dr. Mercola is the physician who has basically devoted his whole practice for many years to putting out kind of non-traditional health information. And I've been writing for his newsletter. So just to clarify, though, this presentation is my own. It may reflect all of his principles, but also is my own thing, so I can't say that this is a Mercola presentation. So I have to be clear about that. I have been a nurse for more than 25 years. Just a little bit about how I got from nursing to PALEO and nutrition. Got a pediatric mental health nursing degree in '96. Then I worked for a number of years doing therapy with children and various things. I just gravitated over to the more holistic side of medicine. It was a gradual progression over the past 10, 15 years. I've also battled my own chronic health problems since I was a kid, probably 4 or 5 they started. And so that's been a major driving force in my life, first toward Western medicine and then toward nutrition and all of the things that Western medicine does not do well, which is managing chronic conditions. But the blessing is that I have learned a tremendous amount along the way, and that led me to wanting to give this information out to others who are struggling. And for me, it's a daily process of managing symptoms and optimizing how I feel, and nutrition and lifestyle is just really the most important factor. So that's a little bit about me. The Paleo Plus presentation, actually, I've been at this several times over the past few years, and I kept getting back, well, we want more information about this. Where can we get more information? So I decided to write a book. And last year, in September, I published it, which is called The Paleo Diet Right for You. So for more information, you can always look at that. It's available both in digital format for Kindle and in paperback. Okay, let's go ahead and enough about me. Get on with the presentation. This is not really a question about the paleo diet who have already decided to do it. This is looking at it for those of you who are excited, want to know more about it, why do it, how it might help you with your health. It's not the kind of thing where you have to do all or nothing. Aspects of it, many principles that help you. And I really believe in kindness to yourself, you know, not putting pressure on ourselves to make major changes all at once. So even if you just took a principle and implemented it, it's important to know why, you know, what is going to be the benefit in that, and making little changes is great. I'm going to be looking at a lot of different principles that come from the paleo diet and other aspects. So anyway, here's my little section there. Our standard American diet is not doing very good for us. Probably if you're here, you already know that. We're digging graves with our forks, so to speak. American diet is leading us to be sick, fat, depressed, tired, out of shape. Most, you know, for typical Americans, is very heavy in sugar and processed food with a lot of refined carbohydrates and grains. Unfortunately, the guidelines we're getting from the food industry and from government are quite upside down, largely nowadays by corporate interests and not so much by an interest in keeping us healthy. So the drug companies richer, follow the government's food pyramid, but to be healthy, then you have to do a little bit of investing on your own. these little comical things inserted in here because I didn't want it to be dry and boring. A lot of information out there, and it can be really overwhelming and really confusing. So the key is to look back at our roots and see how we evolved in terms of food and how evolved in terms of nutrients that we took in and doing now that's different than what we were doing millions, thousands, and millions of years ago. And we're not eating in accordance with our genes. Back at the Paleolithic period, this was 2.6 million years ago to about 10,000 years ago, 10 to 12,000. Eating in accordance with our genes. Genes shaped by the environment that our ancestors lived through natural selection. Who could eat their food and avoid becoming someone else's dinner survived, and those who couldn't do that didn't. So our metabolism evolved around this diet and this lifestyle. And the standard diet is just out of step with our genes, and it manifests itself in the many diseases that we see today. The statistics here are pretty disturbing. As of 2011, 75% of us, nearly a third of children in this country, are obese or overweight. 10% of us have some form of diabetes or pre-diabetes. And the Lancet reported that nearly every country faces alarming obesity rates now. In fact, globally, there's been an 82% increase in obesity over the past 2 decades. For example, Middle Eastern countries are more obese than ever. They've seen a 100% increase since 1990. And this is all the result of the Western lifestyle being adapted by people all over the world. A recent study, 1 billion people worldwide are now obese or overweight. And 1 American now dies from obesity. And these statistics include deaths from type 2 diabetes, heart disease, hypertension, liver disease, cancer, depression, dementia. And the common thread in all of these is metabolic dysfunction, which comes from our diet and our lifestyle. The good news is obesity is almost 100% preventable through diet and lifestyle. Recent study, this was really fascinating. There have been a couple of studies recently. Mothers as well as fathers can actually pass on obesity tendencies to their unborn children, according to the studies that I've been looking at. So there's such a thing as fat sperm, carrying these lifestyle choices and tendencies onto the unborn babies. We thought it was moms, but it was actually moms and dads. Ancestors were hunter-gatherers. So what does this mean? Well, they ate primarily wild meat and game, wild plants, roots, nuts and seeds, and occasionally fruits. Fruits were seasonal. Books were fairly rare. Most of their foods were proteins, fats, and fiber. What they ate was refined sugar, processed food, pasta and pizza, cat brunch, Twinkies, hungry caveman dinners, sex, bread and cereal grains. So the question I'm asked all the time is, how much meat did they eat? And it's not really an easy question to answer because we don't really know. There's a lot of theories out there. The idea of meat and other foods really varied a lot by season and by habitat, by geographic region. They did small animal foraging. Ancestors increased their meat consumption as their hunting skills and tools progressed. Meat increased as Paleolithic man acquired the use of fire. So tools progressed over time, fire came into it, and this was all leading to genetic adaptation. And then size increased along with his increased protein as soon as he was able to cook his food. Your brain requires 9 times as much energy as any other organ of your body. There's really aha moment for me because I do so much writing and get more tired and more hungry when I'm writing than I do if I'm out walking briskly, and this really makes a lot of sense to me. Of course, and so it's a question about how much meat did they eat. It's like a fairly common estimate that 2/3 of his diet was from animals and fish, and this included, land dwellers like rodents and reptiles and turtles and snakes and insects and things like that, and then 1/3 from wild plants with variation by region and season. So we're really going about our hunting and gathering for a million years until something happened 10,000 years ago. And this chart eating habits forever. Can you guess that was? Yeah, agriculture. And wonderful as agriculture was, it had disadvantages in addition to advantages. Grains about 1,000 years ago, and then not too long after that, and then of course wine and beer about 6,000 years ago. But things come downhill after that. We got refined sugar. Well, we got just sugar, refined sugar, and vegetable oils, hydrogenated oils, which are not good, and then all of the processed foods, Oreos, and high fructose corn syrup now is in the majority of all processed foods that are on shelves. So give a grasp. Paleolithic man didn't eat very many grains, so that's something that changed with the advent of agriculture. And they just too dang hard to eat, hard, and you can really eat them without eating them or soaking them or, some processing them into an edible form. And so for a major change with agriculture. And he's eating mostly meat and vegetables and roots. Lip tracts are not accustomed to these foods. Their bodies just don't metabolize them properly. Likely programmed to store carbs. And they can see how this happened because they were rare. They were so old then as they are now. Hunter-gatherer ancestors, carbs serve the purpose of quick energy. We use these metabolic programs to turn carbs into fat, energy available for later when we needed it for survival. I commit one formula to memory from this little class. It should be this: carbohydrates equal fat. The problem is we don't have any mammoths that we're outrunning, but we have carbohydrates everywhere around us. So these stores never get depleted, and they get bigger, bigger, and bigger. Do our belt loops. We're as obsessed then as we are now with the number of calories in our diets. Okay, so the thing we really need to talk about to understand the metabolisms are messed up right now is what does insulin do? What is the role of insulin? This hormone we have that becomes so dysfunctional and is so commonly dysfunctional today. Insulin is the one that gets sugar into your cells. In glycogen, that's a short-term storage molecule, so it pays for energy. Glycogen is the stored form of sugar in your cells. So cells from becoming overloaded with sugar. This to me as pouring cake syrup on your laptop. Not a good thing. You only store a small amount of sugar at a time. Once full, the remainder is converted to fat for long-term storage. What happens is you can get something called insulin resistance. So the more you have in your system, the more insulin you need. when your blood is chronically elevated, it compensates by reducing insulin sensitivity. And this is called insulin resistance. And it's the first step in a cascade of changes biologically that have been dubbed metabolic syndrome. And that's the path that you go down toward type 2 diabetes. So this helps your body to store every carbohydrate as fat. It regulates sodium, magnesium, and calcium. It stimulates sympathetic nervous system. So this is your fight or flight or freeze response. And cause cell proliferation, and this is involved in certain forms of cancer. Cancer feeds off sugar. Fat. When your insulin-resistant body loses its ability to burn fat for energy, and burning engine is literally switched off. Metabolic syndrome is something that is epic proportions in the West and in the United States. It's marked by insulin resistance, obesity, accumulation of fat, especially around the midsection, high blood pressure, high sugar, LDL, and triglycerides. So sugar, especially fructose, is almost instantly converted into fat by your liver. But there is no amount of exercise that can compensate for this metabolic damage once it gets going until you correct your diet. How many of you know who have, getting ahead of myself, but I think we all know these people who spend so much time and energy going to the gym, but they've made any significant changes to their diet. You know, they're doing the triple, mocha on the way to the gym thinking, well, I'll just burn it off, and it doesn't work because you're fixing the underlying fat-burning engine that's broken. I would so many things differently now. I take back a lot of the advice I gave for many years. But I guess the important part is you live and you learn, and you are. Okay, let's want to begin and see if anybody has any questions at this point. So I guess I have to look at the chat window here. I don't see any there.
Val. Val. Oh. Oh, now it seems like it'll let me ask you a question.
Oh, good. I thought maybe I muted myself by accident. I hope not.
I'm sorry. I did have a question. When you're talking about metabolic syndrome, et cetera, tend to, be a chronic carbohydrate consumer, but my blood sugar isn't that high. Can sometimes be as a precursor to this metabolic syndrome show as being low because your body is like making too much insulin before the whole thing actually breaks? Should I read about that? You know what I mean?
Well, syndrome is more than just blood sugar, so that's just one of the factors. Basically, it's more, you have to look at, your acid level, your insulin level, your blood sugar, your weight, your blood pressure. It's kind of like looking at all of those things because metabolic syndrome is a syndrome, meaning many symptoms and the body compensate. If you're compensating, maybe your body's pretty good at keeping that blood sugar okay. Maybe your insulin level's high.
Gotcha. Because I'm usually like in the lower 90s, which it makes me always think, okay, I'm doing all right. But sometimes I wonder if that's just like the calm before the storm.
Now, 90s is technically, according to the basic standards, is okay. But actually, you really want it to be lower than that. You really want it to be down in the 70s or 80s optimally. So even if it's not technically high, it does reflect a little bit of an elevation for fasting. We want to be at the lower end. We don't want to be at the upper end of normal.
Well, that's good because I've always thought, if you get 100, you're perfect, and you only have to worry about it if you're over 100.
Yeah, it's a spectrum. Yeah, it's a whole spectrum. Yeah. So if you were to actually be able to get the carbohydrate cravings under control for a couple weeks and rest of that shit would be quite a bit lower.
No doubt. I have no doubt.
Yeah.
All righty. Well, thanks so much for answering that question. It looks like there's somebody else, Sandra, who's wanting to ask you a question as well. So I'll let get on to her.
I'm seeing the hand. Where am I? Where did it come up?
Well, if you look at the attendees list, in the window, you'll see Karen Gottlieb has raised your hand, and Sandra McCall has asked a question.
Oh, there's the hand.
Okay. All right, so I'm muting me now. Thank you so much, Val.
And I'm, okay, his hand. Okay, allow. Okay, I'm having a hard time. Mute you. Oh, there we go. Okay. I need some help, Vic. I can't seem to. There's no to unmute Karen. Are you?
I'm here. Sorry, I was trying to get on here.
Yeah, I'm clicking on the hand, but nothing's happening.
Well, my goodness.
Not just me?
Well, apparently not. You should be able to have an unmute button in your panel next to her. Not sure why that's not showing up for you right now. Maybe what we could do is invite Sandra and Karen to type their questions into chat box, and then we can go ahead and answer them there. Or you can, rather. I'm sorry, not me. So, Karen and Sandra, if you could do that, that would be great. Thank you so much.
And we're doing that. I have a question from Christine. She's asking me, how is insulin tested? Is it different than the glucose test? Yes, it is a different test. It's easy to measure. It's a blood test, just like glucose. Doctors routinely do it, but you can ask for it. And off the top of my head, there's actually a list of about 6 recommended blood tests, and it's one of Dr. Mercola's articles, and I'd be happy to send you that information if you'd like. And then Dra is asking, does the body treat all sugar the same? Whoops. I was questioning and it disappeared. Okay, body treats all sugar the same. For example, table sugar versus honey. No, it doesn't. And you will hear to the contrary that it does. It really doesn't. The sugar biochemists have shown this unequivocally. Table sugar, fructose especially, is treated differently in the body than glucose. I'm going to get into that a little bit after the Q&A, so I'll explain a little bit about that. But the differences are glucose versus fructose. And different sweeteners have different proportions of those sugars in them. and other sugars, but those two act very differently. Okay. And a question from Karen. Says she typed her question in the Q&A box. Yeah, I do have a handout and just one single page, and I would be happy to. Well, that's already on the Harmony Hill site. Okay. And be able to view this webinar on YouTube, so you can go back and see all the slides after it's posted on there. And I'm not sure when that will be, but we can ask Vic that. Okay. I think I just unmuted you.
Hi. Did you?
Hi.
Okay, what happened was something flashed on my screen, and it gave an ID number. So I just called back in and, and entered my ID number, and now apparently it's working.
Okay. Well, yeah. Well, if I answered your question there a moment ago.
Sorry, but I was trying to call back in. And
okay. Well, your question about will this be available? I have a handout, and so that will be available on the Harmony Hill website. But as far as the slides go, you can go back and view those after it's posted to the website.
Right. So it will be posted to the website, and I can go back.
Yes.
I missed the first couple. Okay.
Okay. Thanks.
Great. Thanks.
Bet. Okay. What is the best sweetener to use? Is asked by Wanda. Well, there's a lot of different ones. I'm going into the whole section about sugars here momentarily, so that'll probably help clarify. But for a sweetener that is absolutely not going to have any negative impact on your body, stevia is my favorite. It's an herb, and it has no, it doesn't regulate insulin. It doesn't do anything bad, and so that's my favorite. But then, as far as other, sugar-based sweeteners, honey is probably my favorite because it's unprocessed. As long as it's unprocessed, not heated, organic, local, preferably. But you have to watch how much you're eating of it, and we're going to get into about fructose, because honey does have fructose in it. The agave syrup has fructose in it. A lot of them do, and you have to watch your total, because you're going to get into problems with your insulin if you have too much total sugars. Okay. Let's see, Karen, she's having trouble getting sound on her computer now that she is muted. I unmuted you.
Okay, yeah. All of a sudden, my picture and sound is gone. Let's see. Return.
Oh.
Wait a minute.
Well, shoot.
Now I'm back on. Is the Paleo Diet right for you? Go ahead with what you're doing. I'll just.
Okay. We'll just move on here. Okay. Oh. To the right screen. We're now into the sugar section, as I was alluding to. Death sugar. This kind of looks like a global warming chart, but it's more of an expanding waistline chart. This is sugar consumption over the past almost 100 years. On this horizontal axis, this is years, and then on the vertical axis is sugar consumption in pounds per year per person. And as you can see, since 1820, we have gone straight up sugar consumption. Really bad thing for a food that we didn't even evolve a way to process, at least at these quantities. And one has very little nutritional value at all. So that's just an illustration of what a change we've had. American consumes 2 tons of sugar in his or her time. So sugar, especially fructose, is the most dangerous food on the planet when it comes to health. It promotes cortisol, or adrenaline release, which is the stress hormone, and then what causes you to feel like fight or flight or freeze, keeps us hyped up. It is good for the immune system. It impairs it. Bacteria, fungi, and viruses all thrive in a sugar-rich environment. It inhibits the hormone leptin, which is important for controlling appetite. Leptin is what signals you to stop eating when you've had enough. So we want that operating. Insulin resistance, which we talked about already. Storage and weight gain. Promotes oxidative stress and premature aging. Oxidative stress is what damages your cells and drives the aging process forward, which also leads to a lot of disease, chronic disease. Fuels your cell growth, cell building, and AGEs. What are AGEs? It's glycogen end products. This is a group of compounds that form when sugar reacts with amino acids, which is called glycation, and are the major mechanisms for disease and aging. So fructose is particularly bad at promoting AGEs and speeding up cellular aging. When I talk about fructose, I'm not talking about a piece of fruit or two a day. We're talking about things like high fructose corn syrup, which are massive, concentrated hits on the liver of this natural form of fructose. You'll have to watch, your overall fructose from fruit and from, and things like that. But I'm talking mostly about the commercial stuff. There are not unlike heroin addiction. So eating triggers the prediction of your brain's natural opioids, which are a key factor in addiction. And this is inflammation. In fact, it's probably the most significant factor underlying most chronic disease, because inflammation, your whole body has this chronic low-level inflammation. This is the genesis of many kinds of health problems that we see today. Metabolism increases uric acid. And this is high blood pressure, drives the pressure up. Now, chronically elevated blood pressure can damage your kidneys, as well as creating inflammation throughout your body. When it affects your blood vessels, it will, vascular disease can happen. And so it sets you up for the risk of attacks and strokes and things like that. In the gut can result in leaky gut syndrome. And this is probably that. It's an imbalance in your gut flora, which basically destroys your immune system, which is, 90% of your immune system begins in your gastrointestinal tract. And leaky gut, allergies and chronic systemic inflammation and all sorts of adverse health things can happen, including forms of cancer. We'll be talking a little bit more about leaky gut later. But basically what it is the lining of your GI tract becomes inflamed and damaged, and the little cilia, the little hair-like things that line it, break down. And so what happens is food particles and chemicals and things that shouldn't go into your bloodstream seep through the wall of your GI tract in your bloodstream. And this can set you up for allergies, inflammation, autoimmune problems, all kinds of things. It takes a whole lot of sugar to poison your body. How much is too much? About 25 grams a day. Most people eat 70 grams a day, average. Ultimately, our teenagers eat a lot more than that. But the goal is to limit your overall fructose to 2 grams. I thought this chart was next, but I see it isn't, but we'll get back to that. Basic chart that shows the amount of fructose in all fruits, or not all fruits, but a lot of fruits, and dried fruits. So you can kind of see and compare them. I thought that was next, but I see it isn't. So we'll come to that. sugar to fat. This is big fat number one. Fat. This is one of the biggest nutritional myths in the history of our country. If you do nothing else in this presentation, remember that fat doesn't make you fat. Well, this started back in 1953 when a guy named Ansel Keys did a study, a very poor study, and erroneous conclusion that caused heart disease. The problem didn't control for sugar, and sugar was the real culprit. But like wildfire, saturated fat was blamed for all ills. So the whole fast food industry came out of this. Fat was removed from processed foods, and, well, the foods tasted like crap. So they had something back in to make them palatable. So they dumped in a sugar and salt and chemicals. The real culprit behind the escalating rates of diabetes and obesity and heart disease and other serious health problems, not fat. Finally, however, low-fat, high-carb diets are still recommended by the AMA and the American Dietetic Association, which now goes by a different name that escapes me, and most cardiologists. And lucky enough to have a whole cardiologist, and there is one up in Seattle. Pretty soon we won't fit through our front door thanks to all this great medical advice. Like our friend the mouse. Hi, Ken. Okay. More fructose corn syrup. This is a graph that will kind of show you how much of that we've been eating. So on the horizontal axis, 1976 to 2000, and on the vertical axis is pounds of fructose corn syrup, and you can see we've gone straight up. And on this axis over here, we can see our obesity rates, which have climbed accordingly. Fructose in these concentrated forms is really hard on the liver. In fact, 100% of it has to be broken down by your liver. And this is different than glucose, for example, which can be broken down by every cell in your body, including brain. You're drinking a soda, and you're drinking this concentrated form of fructose, the whole of it goes straight to your liver, and in fact, products are similar to alcohol. One of them is acid. It's like alcohol without the buzz. So if we go to our hunter-gatherer friends, they're getting this amount of sugar in any form. They already knew sugar as fructose in fruit and honey, when they would run across a beehive. It was an old treat, as was honey. 4 of the 5 top calorie sources are carbohydrates, and exactly the opposite of how they ate. Sugar is everything. If you look at your box of cereal, bread, crackers, even things that really you don't think of as sweet, it's in there. The number 1 source of calories in the Western diet. And in fact, the role of the liver now is being possibly the obesity is from alcohol. So this is because impact fructose has on your liver. Fructose chart. It somehow got it migrated. I think I have gremlins in my PowerPoint. To answer this question on how much fructose is too much, it's helpful to be able to see how much you're getting from fruit. And so in the chart, it starts on this left side with low sugar fruits, lemons and limes and cranberries. Very general are pretty good. And then into things like honeydew and banana, you're pure into 6 to 7 grams per piece of fruit. Take a look at the dried fruits here. You know, looking at 7 to 23 grams in these fruits. Vic and I were talking the other day about our favorite, which is dates. One medium medjool date, 7.7 grams of fructose. So dates, and you're at your, almost 15 grams. So the 25 grams a day, what I like to tell people, if you have metabolic issues, insulin issues, weight issues, whatever, you might shoot for, no, say it ain't so. I agree. I have them in my pantry. But shoot for actually 15 grams a day from fruit, because if you're eating any processed foods at all, you're going to be getting another 5 to 10. You just can't avoid it. But if you've got a clean diet and you don't do processed food, then most of your fruit is going to come from fruit. This is the sheet that I do have a handout for those of you who want to download it. Okie dokie. This just kind of illustrates, it's kind of a handy pie chart because you can really see how much our diet has changed. Wedges show what our ancestors ate. So you're eating eggs and your fish and your nuts, seeds, and legumes and your fruit. And then white wedges came after the onset of agriculture. So you got dairy and your grains and your refined vegetable oils and your refined sugars. You can see 75% of our modern diet is refined foods, and our ancestors ate none of those. Not only are they high in calorie and high energy, but they're low in nutrition compared to ancestral diets. That brings us to big fat lie number 2. Saturated fat. Saturated fat is bad. Fats from properly raised animals are extremely health-promoting and excellent sources of energy for the human body. This may take some reprogramming. I know it did for me. We've had it drilled to us for many years that saturated fats are bad for us. So what does properly raised mean? Well, this would be fats from animals who have been raised on pasture. Extremely healthy fats for humans, treated and humanely killed, free probiotics and hormones, raised, and not confined to small spaces like thousands of them crammed into a warehouse, local and biodynamically raised if possible. So most meats in the grocery store and the dairy does not come from animals like this. They come from CAFOs, animal feeding operations, also known as factory farms. Line is, fat doesn't make you fat. Excess sugar makes you fat. Remember, carbohydrates equal fat. That was your formula. So take a guess. What percentage of your food should consist of fat? Yep. 50 to 75%. And it's quite a bit. Now that doesn't mean by volume. That means by co-take. So a little bit of fat goes a long way. So it might not be as much as you really think. It's not like your whole plate's full of fat. But to accomplish this, do it is with Paleo Diet, because it has a pretty good ratio of the macronutrients, the carbohydrates to protein to fat. But we have to basically turn our fat-burning engines back on by returning to how we used to eat. So the Paleo Diet was probably made most popular by Lauren Cordain. It's been around for a lot of years. It's new. But Lauren Cordain is the one that wrote the book called Paleo Diet, which is what most people are familiar with. For about 40 years. It's tracked upward lately. It's diet at all. In fact, I don't even like calling it the Paleo Diet because it's really more of a lifestyle. It's not you're going to implement for a month or 6 months and go back to the way of eating. The best is that 99% of our genetic code has changed over the past 10,000 years. The environment and the foods that we eat have changed drastically. Another of it is that Paleo was engaged in almost constant physical activity. And so, a burning machine, he blew that glycogen, all day long. And so he didn't have this problem that we have of our fat-burning engines becoming slow. They can't remember how to operate. Paleo diet stood the test of time. Nutritionally sound, and people feel better on it. Okay, so the advantages of the diet. The foods are nutritionally dense. There's macronutrient balance, meaning carbohydrates to fat to protein. There's nutrients, because you're eating an increased variety of food. Your insulin response is better, and therefore, if you need to lose weight, that happens pretty much automatically. If you need to gain weight, that happens automatically as well. Glycemic load, it's fiber if you eat enough vegetables. It's not all meat, as some people, I think, believe. Electrolyte balance, because it's higher in potassium, lower in sodium. It's acid-alkaline balance. Again, you've got to have those vegetables. Those are really important. Hypoallergenic, a fatty acid profile, and the food is so good. And the downside? Well, here's the deal. You have to come back next week to find out, because I'm going to address that. The downside. But it's not a deal breaker. I'm just going to basically tell you how to tweak things a little bit so that they work best for you. That for a teaser. Are there any scientific studies? There are a few, not a lot. There are 4 that are worth mentioning. A few studies that have been done have been small, but they've had excellent results. So I'll just briefly mention these 4. In 2007, Lindelberg put 20 people with type 2 diabetes or heart disease on the paleo diet, and they all showed improvement in their blood sugar and leptin after 12 weeks. And then in 2008, Osterdahl had 14 subjects that he put on paleo for 3 weeks. Every one of them lost weight, reduced their waist size, had blood pressure, and better blood clotting profiles. And then in 9, Frasetto had 9 inactive subjects that he put on paleo, he or she, I don't know which, put paleo for 10 days only. And all 9 of them had improved blood pressure, better arterial function, better insulin, cholesterol, and triglycerides. Just 10 days. And same one, Lindelberg in 2009 had 13 diabetic patients that he put on both the diabetes diet and the paleo diet for 3 months each, so it was a crossover study. Paleo diet resulted in improved weight loss, weight size, blood pressure, better HDL, which is a good lipid, that higher, triglycerides, blood glucose, and hemoglobin A1C. And hemoglobin A1C, for those of you who don't know, is just a measure of your blood sugar level over time. So it's a better way, better than just measuring your glucose at one moment. It shows kind of where your glucose has been for the past weeks or months. Okay, paleo foods. Now we're on to what do I eat? When's she going to tell me what I can eat? So I'm going to eat like a hunter-gatherer, caveman. Vegetables, and a few more vegetables. Of course, vegetables today are different than the vegetables of the Paleolithic times. Different. So we're not doing truly a Paleolithic diet. What we're doing is we're approaching it. We're doing the best that we can with the foods we have access to today. Vegetables, a wide variety is always best. Fruits, things like yams and carrots and beets and turnips. And seeds, all Brazil nuts, walnuts, all of nuts and seeds, with the omega-3 fatty acids. then meats, again, the key, lots of variety. Eggs are in there as well. And then that are especially low glycemic fruits if you have any health issues or metabolic issues. I'm going to stick to the lower fruits, but in addition. So then legumes consumed very much of a quantity at all back in the old times. And they didn't, they may have eaten a few grasses and grains, but it didn't represent a significant portion of their diet. It was really about meats and fish and other animal proteins, and then foraging for vegetables and things. Foods to it. Now this is going to be, let's see. Okay, so I was distracted by a question that came in. If you could hold that question, then we're going to have question and answer here momentarily at the end. Okay. Those would be avoided, especially glutinous grains. But corn, wheat, barley, oats, rye, quinoa, all those are not part of the paleo diet. Whole grains and sprouted grains, because they tend to insulin effects. And we'll be more about that next time. And those are all kinds of beans and peas, lentils, peanuts. Peanuts are actually a legume. And soybeans are as well, and those would be avoided. Dairy for the paleo purists would be avoided, but this talk is called Paleo Plus because I don't think that all dairy needs to be avoided. I'll be talking more about that next time as well. Sugars, yes, avoid these. Find vegetable oils. You can just pull those right off of your, rip them right out of your pantry. Something that came from Cordain's work, he recommended avoiding fatty meats, but I would argue that if you're eating the right kind of meats, those that are raised on grass pastures, not in factory farms, they're always going to be leaner. And I don't think you really have to worry about the fat content and if you're eating the right ones. So another thing that Cordain recommended against, I'm going to be talking about that next week as well, because salt can be good salt and salt can be junk food salt. So it really depends on what kind of salt you're talking about. Interestingly, humans evolved no biological requirement for carbohydrates. We love them, but we don't actually need them like we need proteins and fats. I saved for last. Okay, so that's a good point to pause for questions. Let's see. So bear while I window and those things. I don't have an unmute button for you. So if you would maybe type your question in the chat window, I have no way to unmute you. And let me look and see what the questions are here. So asks, I'd like to know about detox and the best way to do that. How long and what to eat or drink for seniors particularly. To degree, do it so often while transitioning. Also, if you eat sugar after, not for a while, to detox, I haven't decided to eat sugar. Okay. I guess what I would say is if you clean up your diet and you pretty much eliminate extra sugar and processed food, you're going to be detoxing all the time, usually. And so detox is something that your body is going to do every day. And the more stress you put on your liver, okay, the less energy it's going to have to detox. your body detoxes, especially while you sleep, because it doesn't have to do other things. One of the really good ways to detox is to do fasting a couple times, 2-3 days a week. So make sure there's like 12 to 16 hours between dinner and your first meal of the day, and that can be a little bump in terms of detox. And also do an actual detox plan, but a lot of people don't really need to, because once you get rid of the foods that are causing the problems, your body's just going to do that naturally. Okay, Queen asks, my opinion, coconut oil, it's awesome. Absolutely wonderful. One of the best fats you can eat. Just sure it's organic and minimally processed. Some oils and fats, coconut oil, avocados are absolutely fantastic. Raw nuts and seeds. I would say I would prefer the nuts and seeds versus the oils that are made from them, because they're less likely to be oxidized. Every rule is things should be consumed the closest to the natural form that you can get them, as often as possible. Whole food versus the extract. And eating coconut, pieces of coconut. You're going to get the coconut oil, but it's also going to have all the other benefits of the things that are synergistically good for you that are part of the whole food. And Lisa asks, what is the Mediterranean diet, which has a focus on plant foods with limited animal protein intake? I think it's a diet. I think that a lot of good to be said about the Mediterranean diet, and it certainly overlaps with paleo. I guess the primary difference is in the grain. And if you're really healthy and don't have a lot of health challenges, I think it's kind of like both. Try each one for a month or two and see how you feel. If you have insulin issues, then I think paleo is probably better to get that stabilized. I think, people eat junk food and a lot of processed stuff, that either Mediterranean or paleo is going to be a step in the right direction. Let's see. Fish asks, why not legumes? We'll be bringing that next time. I'll be going into detail about legumes and what some of the arguments are against them. So you have to stay tuned. Okay, orange juice not from concentrate. Is that okay? It's really not blended, because it's a big bolus of I'm a big proponent of juicing, but I think you can't, in fruits, you just get too much sugar all at once. So if you were going to juice an orange, I would say put juice of an orange into an entire quart of green juice, and then you're going to be a little bit and not having that hit on your liver. Eat the whole orange. Okay, asks, understand you to say that sugar causes inflammation. Can sugar possibly affect the lymphatic system? But it can, because the more inflamed you are and the more stuff of floating in your blood, the overloaded your lymph system is going to be. Absolutely. How would you best contrast the difference between a paleo diet and Atkins? It seems like pretty similar. I think there is some overlap there, but Atkins was at an early stage of Atkins lower in carbohydrate. Paleo is a moderate carbohydrate diet, because you do get roots, you get yams and your squash and beets and carrots, things like that. And in Atkins, they're off the list in the first stage, and it's been long enough since I've read about Atkins that I don't remember how much they let you have later. And did not have a focus on whole foods, the fats. And I think that needs to be, in this day and age, we have so much toxic food, needs to be part of it. Which circumstances should an individual not do paleo? It's hard for me if you ask me if you know about a certain health circumstance, it would be easier to answer that question because I can't think of the one for you. I would say anytime you start a new diet plan, it'd be good to talk with your healthcare practitioner about it, not if it's contraindicated. Now a little bit about what paleo consists of. You can specifically ask about it. Pay attention to your body, maybe employ different aspects of it gradually, and how you feel. But I don't think it's really going to do harm to anybody unless you go extreme and don't pay attention to how you're feeling. Can you tell us I thought you might ask about who the holistic cardiologist is. My ex-husband saw him, Dr. Maiden. It's Ruben Maiden, which is spelled, I believe, R-U-B-E-N, his first name, and Maiden, M-A-I-D-A-N. And he's at Kirkland. And he's not 100% holistic. He's kind of like straddling the line. He's a traditional cardiologist, but he's very open to if you, for example, or the amount of statins that drive, to not a massive dose like most people do. So he's I think he's very reasonable, he's knowledgeable, and there are just very many cardiologists that will bend. So I'm thrilled to have found him. Okay. I think that's questions. I put hands up on my little list, but I don't have the unmute button next to them, so hopefully somebody who had their hand up typed me a question. I'll go ahead and close. And let's see here. Whoops. I have all of those on my desktop. Hope you can't see them. So next week, on Wednesday at 7, we'll be doing part 2. Wednesday, February 12th at 7. And we're taking a closer look at some of these specific foods, like the proteins and the fats, and what carbohydrates are what ones may avoid, and the kinds of fat, and why fat is such an important nutrient for us, and we're not getting enough of it, and what effects that's causing our health. We'll be looking at also dairy and the role of fermented foods, because that's something that most people don't talk about, and I think it's extremely important that we get some fermented food because of our gut flora and the whole immune system connection. So basically that's it, and also I want to focus on how to do paleo by staying planet-friendly and sustainable and kind to yourself and not create any more stress, because if this is a stressful diet, then it's not going to have the benefit for you. Let's see, I think that is it. I really want to give the thanks to Harmony Hill for giving me the opportunity to do this. You will all join us next week, part 2. And if you want to check out my book, it's on the screen now. Is the Paleo Diet Right for you? And it's available on Amazon or in paperback. Thank you for joining us, and hope to see you next week.